You're listening to Storytime, old time radio for a new era. Thank you for joining us. In this series, we feature Terry Morgan reading from her work, The Ambassador, a fun, family-friendly sci-fi martial arts adventure. Previously, the ambassador had been sent to sort out a treaty problem. Things didn't go well. In this episode, the ambassador tells Kell they are leaving, but first she's going to get dressed and go to meet with the Pelscaran Council. She goes back to her room, calls President Smbarak, and remembers a special gift from her teacher, Master Tai. After the meeting, the ambassador and Kell return to Dagon and board the Magellan to go out for what the ambassador says are consultations. In fact, she is quietly preparing for their next mission. As we begin this episode, the ambassador and Kell are talking about the problems with the Pelscarans. The ambassador has decided to tell the Pelscarans she is not going to approve their application to join the alliance. She invites Kell to come along. Normally he wouldn't go to meetings with her. This time she has something she wants him to see. She goes back to her room. She calls President Smbarak to tell her what has happened. Then she gets dressed. Getting dressed is a theme in the stories. When the ambassador wears her formal robe, she is outwardly showing who she is, an adept and a keeper of Earth as well as a first contact ambassador. But it's not just that she's wearing nice clothes. Her clothes and her robes represent her studies, her lineage, and her level. I wrote a whole chapter about their robes in Book 2, The Ambassador at Razalhag. It's her origin story. At the beginning of the book, the ambassador and her four old friends are young students just arriving on Raz 2. At the end, they are getting ready to graduate and must go to choose their colors. The ambassador and her four old friends represent the 5 elements of Xingyi Chuan: metal, water, wood, fire, earth. Each element has a corresponding color: white, black, green, red, gold. The nature of the characters and their special skills are reflected in their elements and colors. Centaur is metal. He is solid and strong. He doesn't waver. Maro is water. She is calm and quiet most of the time. She can be powerful and relentless. Galen is wood. He nurtures life. He is warm and comforting. Biani is fire. She is brilliant and capable. She is quick. The ambassador is earth. She is receptive. She looks for the balance within and without, and like an earthquake or a landslide, she can change that balance too. In the story, I use the choices they make for their colors to highlight their skills, to add nuance, and give them a chance to show off. My vision for their graduation ceremonies is similar to a traditional Chinese martial arts tournament, with competitors dressed in colorful silks and banners for each of the schools. The idea that we get dressed up to go out somewhere isn't anything new. We put on work clothes to go to work. We put on casual clothes for casual outings. We don't usually wear a business suit to go for a run or jogging pants for a formal presentation. In the stories, I use the way the characters present outwardly to reveal what is going on beneath the surface. That there is something else going on is a theme I use extensively. There is almost always something else going on. Those layers make the story and the characters more interesting. More than the subtext or something a character hasn't revealed, there are threads I've woven into the stories that ask us to consider who we are and how we should treat others. Sorting out questions of ethics and character is something the traditional martial arts ask us to do too. As we learn and develop the physical skills, we also develop character. I repeatedly ask questions of character, ethics, the choices we make, and what we will or will not do in the stories. When she needs help, the ambassador's 4 old friends show up. They know she wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. They trust her. They will ask questions. They won't do anything blindly. They also won't let her go alone. They are ready to do whatever needs to be done. We don't have many friends like that these days. I had to pay attention to their long-term relationships when I was writing. What someone says to a person they have known for 30 years and what they say to someone they have recently met isn't the same. Having that history matters. So does the confidence that comes from knowing that we have friends who will be there when we need them, no matter what. Now, from the Ambassador, Chapter 4, Getting Dressed, the Ambassador's room on Pelscaran. The Ambassador picked up her bag and set it on the bed. She opened it, looked at it for a minute, then went over to a small desk and activated her personal relay. The signal was encrypted and encoded with her personal ID. It would be relayed with priority by any ship that picked it up. She paced the floor as she waited for the connection. The screen lit up. Ambassador Lawrence, this is a pleasant surprise, President Smbarak said. No, it's not. I wish I had better news, Madam President, the ambassador said. What happened? Micah? Est-tu là avec moi? Are you there with me? President Smbarak asked. Oui, j'ai tout à dire. I have to tell you. The First Minister disinvited me from the signing, said women should shut up, and Kell has been harassed, she said. She spoke quickly, not wanting to say any of it. Her hands were shaking. She was more than annoyed. She caught her breath, trying to keep back her anger and her tears. Mon Dieu, qu'un diable, que vous et Kell allez bien? My God, what a devil. Are you and Kell all right? President Smbarak asked. Allez bien. N'avons pas été physiquement attaqués. We are okay. We were not physically attacked, the ambassador said. At least there's that, President Smbarak said. The ambassador shook her head and looked down. The Pelscarans have repeatedly and deliberately insulted everyone from the Alliance. They have been rude and condescending. I tried to get them to look at us as partners, as friends. They could only see us as servants who must cater to them. I couldn't get past that, she said. She didn't have to report this sort of thing very often. She had almost always been able to find a way. Not this time. Micah, no, it's not your fault. You can't make them see what they don't want to see. We knew they were being difficult, President Smbarak said. The ambassador looked down and shook her head. She took another deep breath. She clenched her fists and released them. She was sad and angry, and this was all just so wrong. C'est pire. It gets worse. They wanted to exclude our Charter of Rights. I thought they understood the Charter of Rights was fundamental and they would have to accept it if they wanted to become members. But they looked at it like it was just another bargaining point, she said. Mon Dieu. Did you find that out before or after they disinvited you? President Smbarak asked. Before. That's been the sticking point. The Pelscarans made it plain that any agreement they are going to sign is for show. They aren't going to comply, the ambassador said. President Smbarak sat up straighter. For the records, then, what have you decided, Ambassador? She asked. She didn't need to ask. She knew. The ambassador nodded. Madam President, the Pelscarans are not ready to join the alliance. They are too full of themselves and too busy trying to tell others what to do. They don't want to get along with others unless the others are servants who must take their orders. Even the basic idea that abusing those who are of a lower station or different is wrong does not appear to be something they are ready to consider. They see everything as a power game. Whoever has more gives the orders, she said. I agree. They are not ready, President Smbarak said firmly. The ambassador shifted back a little. There's one more thing I need to tell you. I'm getting dressed to go meet with their council, she said. You're getting dressed? President Smbarak asked. Yes. I have something to say to their first minister before I leave, the ambassador replied. Normally, I'd ask you to explain. Not this time. You have my full support for whatever you are going to do. They need to understand that what they have done is not acceptable. They also need to understand what the Central Alliance and our ambassadors represent, President Smbarak said. Thank you, Eliel. I'm grateful for your support. It helps. It really does make a difference, the ambassador said. President Smbarak nodded, then frowned. You will be called to appear before the High Council, she said. The ambassador sighed. She dropped her shoulders. I understand. I failed, she said. President Smbarak tightened her jaw, slapped the table in front of her, and pointed at the ambassador. No, you didn't fail, Ambassador Lawrence. You did not fail. You have done exactly what we sent you to do. Resolve the issues and come to a decision. You did more than that. You have provided us with valuable insights. Now we know who the Pelscarans are and what they will do. You have our thanks and our gratitude, she said. The ambassador smiled slightly and nodded. She'd not seen her friend quite this upset before. Thank you, Eliel, she said with gratitude and appreciation. If there were any issue about this when she came before the council, she had no doubt that Eliel was going to make it crystal clear where she stood. Be careful, Micah. Be very careful. This is going to cause a stir, President Smbarak said. Probably. Thank you, Eliel, the ambassador said. She closed the comm link. Small and light, recall. The training compound on Raz 2. The ambassador was resting in her guest room on Pelscara. She had packed. Her bags were next to the door, ready to go. Her robes were draped over the end of the bed. A small packet wrapped in gold cloth lay on top of them. She had already notified the other members of the delegation that they would be leaving immediately. She and Kell would leave right after her meeting with the council. She sat up and stretched. She looked over at her dark gold and deep red robes and smiled a little. She picked up the packet, held it in one hand, and gently peeled open the worn gold cloth. What has it been, 30 years, she thought? She remembered the day Master Tai gave it to her. She had been training all day. It was hot. The ground was dry. She left tracks as she moved through the sets over and over again. None of them were easy to do. She had stopped to rest. Master Tai came over to her with a small package in his hands. It was wrapped in a simple gold-colored cloth and tied around on all sides with a red ribbon. He held the packet with both hands and extended it to her. Here, this is for you, he said. Thank you, Master Tai, Micah said. Surprised and bewildered, she took the packet with both hands. She had learned it was the polite way to give or receive anything. What is it, she thought. She squeezed the packet as she put it with her things. Master Tai had taught them that opening a wrapped gift immediately was impolite. The package should be put away and opened later in private. So it wasn't until later in the day, after she went back to her room, that she opened the packet. She held the packet with one hand and pulled the knot in the center. The ribbon fell away. She took each of the corners and laid them back. Inside was what looked to be a small square of cream-colored fabric. She recognized the cloth immediately. It was legendary. When she picked it up, it unfolded to reveal an inner shirt of the most elegant silk and mithril weave. It glimmered with tiny rainbows, even in the dim light. Oh my, I've been, she said. She started crying and laughing at the same time. Master Tai giving her the shirt had a deeper significance. Only those accepted for inside training were given such things. It was both an acknowledgement of her work thus far and an invitation for her to begin the next level of training. I'll be right back. She put it on. It was an amazing cloth, light and heavy at the same time. It seemed to change colors in the light, sometimes silver, sometimes white, sometimes whatever was nearby. It was as if it became part of her, like another layer of skin, moving as she moved. She'd never seen a shirt like this up close before. She looked down at the shirt. "It fits me perfectly," she whispered. She smiled. A tear welled up in her eye. She sat down and hugged her knees, rocking back and forth, rubbing the sleeves. "It fits me. It fits me," she repeated. She always kept the shirt with her. She didn't wear it often, only on certain occasions. This was going to be one of them. As light and airy as it appeared, the cloth was almost impenetrable. Finishing touches. The ambassador's room on Pelscaran. The ambassador had almost finished getting dressed. It took a few minutes to put on all the various layers. She fastened her family crest to her collar. It was another of those things she only wore on certain occasions. Her ancestors had been among the first to leave the Sol system. Her family were among those who led the effort to unite the systems and create the alliance. She looked at her bags, opened one, and took out a smaller bag. She pulled a small belt out of the bag and set it on the bed next to her outer robe. She was going to wear it, but putting it on could wait a few minutes more. It wasn't an ordinary belt. It was the belt of Orion. It was made of cream-color braid interlaced with gold and rose crystal threads. The front clasp was three-color gold with a fire opal in the center, the ancient jewel of Al-Nilam. She was only the third adept to be able to wear it. The first time Master Tai suggested she could barely pick it up. It was too heavy. Only those who had the strength to see and fully accept themselves as who they are could wear it. She put on her outer robe with the insignia of the Alliance, pulled her ambassador sash with her medals and awards over her shoulder, and fastened her first contact pin on her collar. Finally, she picked up the belt and put it on. The opal began to glow. The gold and red fire inside became stronger and more insistent. She closed her robes to hide it. "After all I have to put up with, it's time to put a stop to their insults. This is going to be fun," she thought. She was half trying to convince herself and half knowing she was going to enjoy it. She picked up her plain travel cloak and took a deep breath. "Kell," she said into the comlink. "Yes, Ambassador, I'm parked out front," Kell replied. "Thank you. I'll be right out," she said. She stood for just a second behind the closed door, lowered her head, and took one more deep breath. "Here I go," she thought. She opened the door and walked out. Kell looked up just as she came out. He had only seen her fully dressed like this a few times. She seemed to be floating more than walking, the layers of gold and rust swirling around her. There was something about the way she moved that made him happy he was waiting for her and not trying to stand in her way. "Good afternoon, Ambassador," he said. He eyed her robes as she got in. The ambassador smiled. "This is more or less what I look like when I go to meet the High Council," she said. "Impressive," Kell said. He nodded. "I'm going to meet the Pelscaran Council as a first contact ambassador and a keeper of Earth. If they want to insult me, I'm going to make sure they know who I am," she said. She raised her back, dropped her shoulders, lowered her chin, turned her head just slightly to one side, and smiled. Kell grinned. "Let's go," the ambassador said. Kell adeptly moved the small craft into the local lane. It wasn't far. What is true? The council chambers on Pelscaran. The ambassador and Kell arrived at the building, parked, and walked up the wide steps to the council chambers together. An open landing led to a tall set of glass doors. The doors opened as they approached. Inside, the large hall was mostly quiet. "We've spent so much time here. The trade teams have all worked so hard. I wanted to have a nice quiet signing, celebrate a little, and go home." "Ah, well," the ambassador said. "We get that last part, don't we? The going home part," Kell asked. "Yes, we do get that," the ambassador replied with a grin. She had asked for the meeting. She told the Pelscarans that she had spoken with the Alliance and now she needed to speak with them. She fully expected the ministers to believe she was going to apologize after having been chastised by the council. They would be eager to let her know what a mistake she had made to say such things to their first minister. She was counting on it. Most of the Pelscaran ministers were already in the council chambers. A few were standing just to one side of the entrance. They all had snide expressions as if they were jackals waiting for the chance to berate her again. "She's here to beg us to forgive her," one of them said. "I bet their council president had a thing or two to say to her," another said. Kell heard them and looked sideways at the ambassador. She seemed to be smiling just a little. Not much, but there was a hint. She set this up. She's going to do something. And she's enjoying it, he thought. The ambassador walked over to a landing just above 3 wide stairs leading to the main floor. She stood there quietly as she waited for the Pelscarans to take their seats. Several of the ministers kept talking. Finally, one by one, they moved to their seats. The ambassador looked around the room. She was still on the landing and still wearing the plain cloak over her robes. "Good evening, ministers. I thank you for agreeing to meet with me on such short notice," she said. "If you wanted a meeting with us, you should at least be dressed properly," the first minister said. The others all nodded. "Not even dressed properly," they echoed. The ambassador took a step back and motioned to Kell. "Do not come onto the floor. Watch from over there," she said sternly. She pointed towards an anteroom with an open viewing area where visitors could watch the proceedings. She twisted slightly, removing the plain cloak and handing it to Kell with one broad sweeping motion. The Pelscarans liked showy and dramatic presentations. She was about to give them one they would remember for some time. Kell nodded and went over to where she pointed. The ambassador started down the steps. Kell turned his head from side to side. He wasn't quite sure what he was seeing. She seemed to get taller as she strode out to the middle of the floor. Her robes floated around her, but she seemed to be getting heavier, as if with each step she took, she carried more weight. The first minister squinted as he stood up. "Well, at least you look more like an ambassador now," he said. The other ministers laughed. "We only agreed to this meeting so you could apologize to me and beg our forgiveness. Hurry up and get on with it," the first minister said. The other ministers nodded. "Shameful," one said. "How undignified," another said. "Calls herself an ambassador, ha ha," another said. The ambassador kept walking. She stopped in the center of the floor. The fire from the opal got stronger and deeper until it began to radiate a deep red all around her. The dark light from her belt grew stronger, pervasive, penetrating. It seemed to flow around her and through her. For a brief moment she seemed to disappear into the darkness. Then a bright light started to radiate around her. A dark puddle appeared below her feet. It was as if she was not standing on anything. It was as though she was suspended somewhere in between. The ministers had been so busy repeating their chastisements of her to each other, they hadn't noticed the light. First one, then another saw it. They stopped talking. The ambassador took the opportunity. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," she said. "Yes, well, get on with it. We have things to do," the first minister said. The other ministers all nodded. Yes, get on with it. Hurry up," a few of them muttered. The ambassador smiled and deflected the insult with a polite, deferential tone. "Thank you for your indulgence, First Minister. I will be brief," she said. "As well you should," the first minister sniped at her. The ambassador looked around the room. "Over the 2 years of our negotiations, our teams have had some productive exchanges," she said. The ministers all muttered a version of "not really" and "not so much" to themselves, shaking their heads. The ambassador smiled quietly. She had expected them to be contrary. What she was saying was not for their benefit, it was for the official record. The Central Alliance includes many worlds and many cultures. We recognize that we don't always agree and that we must learn about and try to respect the customs of other cultures. That is the basis for our Charter of Rights. We have worked very hard to develop this understanding and encourage all our member worlds to do the same. Over time, we have learned that it is important for those who want to join the Central Alliance to both understand why it was formed and to support the principles on which it is founded, she said. As she spoke, the light around her intensified, becoming deeper and more penetrating. The pool under her covered the entire floor. The First Minister scoffed. We really don't care that much what you think is important. The Central Alliance has told us for 2 years that they want this treaty. You have caused this problem with your attitude and your bad manners. You need to admit your mistakes and apologize. You are nothing but an ambassador. You deliver messages. You don't speak for the Alliance. We don't need to listen to you. Where is the President of the Alliance? Maybe we should talk to him, he said. The ambassador smiled. He's going to walk right into it, she thought. First Minister, speaking with the President of the High Council won't do you any good in this matter, she said. I don't care what you think will do me any good. I want to talk to the President. You go call him and tell him to come here himself if he wants any treaty with us, the First Minister shot back. The ambassador smiled. He's hooked, she thought. First Minister, I would be extremely happy to go call President Smbarak. In fact, I spoke with her just a short time ago. She and I are good friends. However, it seems a waste of your time and hers to call her just so she can tell you that you should listen to what I'm about to tell you, she said. They all stopped chattering and looked at her again. How dare you? No woman can be president. What is this? Who do you think you are? The First Minister demanded. He puffed up his chest, his face turned purple. Kell shook his head. He could not remember ever having seen someone treat her this badly. As he watched, a faint golden spiral began to turn inside the dark red light around her. The ambassador looked straight at him. I am Ambassador Michael Lawrence, daughter of Toraran of Vega 9 and first disciple of Master Tai Aragon of Razalhag. I hold a first contact charter and I speak for the Central Alliance. You have made every effort to make these negotiations as tedious and difficult as possible. You have been abusive. You have treated our teams as if they are your servants, she said. Her voice seemed to penetrate every part of the chamber. The First Minister shouted back, No, we did none of those things. Your side was constantly whining about the details. You never did anything we told you to do. You didn't want to cooperate, he said. This was the Pelscaran standard negotiating method, to make up something or find some small thing to use to lay blame. They used it as a bargaining ploy. The natural response for someone who did want to cooperate would be to offer more concessions as a way to demonstrate a desire for cooperation. The Pelscarans got quite a few concessions that way. Not this time. This time, the ambassador shook her head. You have done all those things. You are doing the same thing now, she said. She was offering the First Minister the opportunity to wag his finger in her face in front of all the other ministers. She didn't expect him to pass it up. I am doing no such thing. I said no such thing. You are trying to cause another problem, the First Minister shouted. He pointed his finger at her. The ambassador smiled. I can't hear you. Why don't you come out here and tell me to my face instead of shouting at me? Come out here and tell me how much it is you think I'm causing a problem, she said. The First Minister huffed and puffed again. If you can't hear me, that's your problem. I don't need to do anything. It's all your problem. You started it, he said. Are you afraid to step into the light, First Minister? The ambassador asked, suppressing a grin. If you can stand there, so can I, he said. He puffed up arrogantly and walked out onto the floor. I'll be right back. Step into the light. The council chambers on Pelscara. The ambassador was standing in the fire of the ancient jewel of Al-Nalam. It radiated a deep red that was equal parts light and dark. It revealed everything about anyone who was in the light to anyone who was touched by it. She would see exactly who he was. Since she was also in the light, he would see her. But it was more than a mildly perceptual thing for the receiver, something they could dismiss as a brief feeling or an odd thought. Anyone who stepped into the light would be instantly confronted with all her memories, as Tor Iran's daughter, a princess of the Alliance, as a keeper of Earth, and as an adept in the ancient arts. It would not be pleasant for them. Even when she kept control of her thoughts, it would be a lot for the other person to deal with. But if she was careful, the damage could be kept to a minimum. Was there something you wanted to say, First Minister? She asked. She tilted her head to one side. The First Minister started towards her. The floor under him seemed to be disappearing into a dark puddle, and he was sinking deeper and deeper into it. The light around her poked his skin like sharp needles. He looked at the ambassador, bewildered and awed. He could see her as she was. She wasn't the small, inept creature he had been taunting. She was so much stronger than he had even thought to imagine. He was afraid of her now. He tried to take a step back, but he couldn't move. He tried to open his mouth, but he couldn't. The other ministers had been laughing and talking. They noticed the First Minister struggling to speak and unable to take another step. They grew quiet. The ambassador looked around the room. I now speak for the Central Alliance. We seek peaceful relationships and trade. We have spent countless hours trying to negotiate a trade agreement with you. At each step you found something to fault us for. Never once were you in error. Had many discussions over things that shouldn't have been an issue but were. You have been all too ready to disparage us and make us the brunt of your jokes, she said. The First Minister waved his hands. He was still trying to open his mouth. The ambassador looked down at him. The light you are standing in is the fire of Al-Nalam. While you are in it, you can speak only if what you say is true. You cannot speak now because what you want to say is not true. You have one opportunity to say something truthful. Is there something you want to say, First Minister? She asked. The light around her dimmed slightly. The other ministers all looked at the First Minister, nodding and waving to encourage him to say something. The First Minister began slowly. Ambassador Lawrence, we regret giving you the impression, he said. What impression? The ambassador interrupted sharply. Be careful what you say, she said. The light above her turned a brilliant fire red, filling the entire room. The golden spiral took on a clear, bright white hue and wrapped around her. The pool below her turned such a deep red it was black. We regret giving you the impression that we were ungrateful to you and the Alliance. We did some things we should not have done, the First Minister said. The other ministers nodded and looked contrite. There was clearly more to this ambassador than they thought, and they would rather not find out what else she could do. Yes, you did, the ambassador said in a flat, matter-of-fact tone. The light around her became less intense. The pool below her took on a reddish hue again. There is no excuse for what you did. It created problems no one needed and made for a difficult negotiation. The way you have treated our teams is completely unacceptable. I was planning to return for the treaty signing next month, but you disinvited me, she said. The light around her grew more intense, sending out a volley of sparks like porcupine needles. The First Minister winced in pain as they struck him. The ambassador looked around the room. The light changed again, becoming less intense. You will learn our Charter of Rights, and you will prepare a plan for how you are going to address these rights in your society. In 2 months, an emissary will return with a new framework that requires you address the manner and types of communications we will have. At the first sign of anything like what I or my team have experienced, we will end the negotiations permanently, she said. She looked around the room again. I see that you all understand. Good, she said. She turned to leave. The light began to recede. in the space between, outside the council chambers on Pelscaran. The ambassador walked up the steps. Kell had been watching from the viewing area. He stepped out of the anteroom and handed her the plain cloak he'd been holding for her. She paused to pull it over her shoulders and close her robes as they walked outside. As long as she wore the belt, the jewel would glow. "Let's go," she said. She smiled at Kell as gently as she could. Kell hesitated. He had seen her too. Powerful, with a will that would not be stopped, a deep pain he could feel but not fathom, and a grim resolve that gave her command. As much as he had seen and appreciated her quiet approach and efforts to be kind, he now understood where that strength came from. It was dark, very dark, that part of her, as if she stood between, neither in the darkness nor in the light, and yet part of both, as if they were pulling her apart. The ambassador stopped and touched his arm gently. "I know what you saw. I invited you to see it. Sometimes I'm afraid of who I am too," she said softly. She looked down for a minute, then straight at him. Kell looked at her with a new understanding and a new level of respect. Her eyes had a clarity and depth he had not seen before. It was as if she was looking through him, to who he was inside, straight to all he kept hidden. He was afraid. "There is as much darkness as there is light. To stand in the fire is to be pulled in both directions, and to risk being pulled too far in either direction. The mind must be quiet and the spirit strong. There can be no doubt," she said. She could see his fear. It wasn't the right time. She stopped. "You have a clear mind. Your spirit is strong. You know how to stand. I've seen your courage many times," she said. Kell took a deep breath and pulled himself up just a little straighter. "Having this very nice inner shirt helped," the ambassador said, changing the subject. She opened the sleeve of her outer shirt to show him the fabric. Kell smiled with appreciation and relief. "It's beautiful. What is it?" "The way it shines, as if the light is coming from within," he said. The ambassador nodded. "It was a gift from Master Tai. I don't wear it often. It protects me. It's made of a silk and mithril cloth that makes it almost impenetrable," she said. She looked at Kell thoughtfully. Her expression changed to one much more serious. "We have something to do. It won't be easy," she said. "Ambassador?" Kell asked. "We have something we are going to do. It will require all our skills, even the ones we keep hidden. We can have no doubts. Today I invited you to see something that few have ever seen." "Mie wachin yam kelo." "I trust you," she said. "Pilamayaye, ilahamayaye." "Thank you. You make me smile," Kell said. He realized fully for the first time that she wasn't using his language to be polite or to encourage him. She was trying to reach him on a much deeper level, as if she wanted to talk to his grandmother. Somehow, he knew his grandmother wanted to hear her. She knew. She understood. He didn't know how, but she did. He smiled. "Kell, could we take a scenic route home? I'd like some time to think," the ambassador asked quietly. "Of course, Ambassador. We can skirt the Eridani system. There's a place I know where we can get some fresh soup," Kell said. He looked at her sideways, grinning. "Yang Rotang?" the ambassador asked. Kell nodded. The ambassador's face brightened. "Let's go," she said. Chapter 5. Endings and Beginnings. Part 1. Consultations. Before the ending of one, two begins. It contains the beginning of the next one and decides the ending of the last one. Prelude. The ambassador's quarters on the Magellan. The ambassador and her team had gone out on a routine meet-and-greet mission to the Altair system. She was in her quarters on the Magellan, struggling to prepare her mission report. Record. "When we arrived, No, scratch that. We arrived in the morning, Now what?" "They don't want a weather report," she said. The comm chime sounded. The ambassador looked up at the screen and smiled a huge smile. "President Smbarak, good evening. I'm so glad you called," she said. "Good evening, Ambassador. You're working late," President Smbarak said. "Not sure if working quite captures it. I've been trying to put something together for Namani. The best I have so far is a weather report," the ambassador said. She dropped her head, frowned, then looked up. President Smbarak laughed. That's why you seemed so grateful when I called, she said. The ambassador nodded. I took notes from the private meetings to give to Nemani, she said. She grinned, shifted her shoulders, and sat up a little straighter. She was clearly trying for an attagirl. President Smbarak frowned a little. And? She asked. The ambassador dropped her chin and looked up. I can't read some of my notes. I tried those, she said. President Smbarak tried not to laugh. So now you are, she asked. Trying to record the summary that Nemani needs to make sense out of what I have so he can prepare a full report, the ambassador said. Great. When can we expect the report? President Smbarak asked. The ambassador laughed. You want miracles, Aliel? I took notes, she said. Yes, Micah. I'm happy you took notes. Next time, maybe, I don't know, something you can read, President Smbarak said. They both laughed. Can't you clear Nemani so he can come with me? The ambassador asked. He's on the short list, President Smbarak said. Make it shorter? The ambassador asked, smiling. President Smbarak nodded. I'll try, she said. Thank you. So why did you call? The ambassador asked. President Smbarak frowned and sighed. We just received a new batch of reports. They are grim. The Olmeri incursions have started again. We're getting more and more reports of trade suspensions and environmental damage, but this time on a much bigger scale. They've started going after entire systems, not just a few outlying planets here and there. They've been spotted much too close to several systems with planets that are critical to our most widely used medicines. We can't let them continue their expansion projects. I don't have an answer. We have to find a way to stop them, she said. Stop them? How? We don't even know what they really want. All we know is that once they pick a target, they are relentless. They won't stop. They may change their focus for a short time, but they continue to press for whatever it was they wanted until they get it. The best we can hope for is to slow them down or divert them, the ambassador said. Divert them? Well, dear Micah, we can't send them somewhere else, President Smbarak said. We can't let them keep coming either. If we could somehow find a way to limit where they can go, maybe give them something else to do and somehow set up a no-pass zone, we could at least buy ourselves some time to find a solution. They are not benevolent overlords. The damage they do is massive. When they take over, they destroy the existing civilization and all of the planetary ecosystems, the ambassador said. Yes, that's exactly what will happen inside this no-pass zone you are talking about. Micah, do you understand what you're suggesting? We can't do that. We simply can't, President Smbarak said. She was not one to get excited or become emotional about much, but the idea of sending the Olmeri somewhere else was so repugnant she had to make it clear. I don't like it either, Aliel. I wouldn't even consider this if I thought we had any alternative. I've seen their destruction firsthand. They don't leave anything of the original world alive. They put the food, water, and mineral supplies, no, the very existence of every system in the Alliance at risk. We can't let them keep coming. We have to find a way to stop them. But for now, diverting them is our best option. What else can we do? The ambassador asked. Je ne sais pas. On est inquiet. I don't know. We're all worried, President Smbarak admitted. Il y a plus, ne sais pas. There's more, isn't there? The ambassador asked. Oui, President Smbarak said. She sat very still and looked at the screen. This is not easy for me to say, and it won't be easy for you to hear. The Olmeri are actively looking for you. Everyone with you is at greater risk now. You have to be more careful. Micah, why in all creation did you think introducing yourself was a good idea? The ambassador shrugged and shook her head. I know. It couldn't be helped. They would have found Kaylin. The Korra can't protect themselves yet. I had to do something, she said. I'll be right back. But now the Olmeri know who you are. You and Kell both took great risks. Lucky for all of us, they couldn't figure out where you had been. You sent them to Rigel? President Smbarak asked. The ambassador grinned. They needed to go somewhere far, far away, she said. They both laughed. All right, Micah. I'll get the council to agree to your plan. We know we need more time. This could give us that. What do you have in mind for the diversion? How are you going to get them to go wherever it is you're going to send them? President Smbarak asked. The ambassador smiled. I don't know yet. President Smbarak frowned. That does not fill me with confidence, she said. The ambassador shrugged. It's the best I can do, she said. They both laughed at what they just said. That direct honesty was something they valued and respected in each other. President Smbarak grew serious. Micah, this is one of those rare times when the High Council is unanimous. You have full authorization and approval to use, find, or acquire whatever resources you need. We must find a way to stop the Olmeri, she said. The ambassador nodded. I understand, Madam President. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me, Micah. Whatever you are going to do, I know it won't be easy. Not for you or anyone with you. I will be here, awaiting your plan and your safe return. To use an old Earth expression, Godspeed, Micah. Godspeed, President Smbarak said. The comlink faded and the screen went dark. The ambassador turned away from the screen, shaking her head from side to side. She didn't want to do this, not any of it. She didn't want to be dealing with the Olmeri, but here she was. So it began, she thought. She knew more than she wanted to know about what they were going to face. It would take all of her team and a few more. Tomorrow will be a long day, she said. She laid down on the bed, curled up with a blanket, and went to sleep. A nice reception. A large dining room on Procyon 5. The ambassador and Kell were at a reception on Procyon 5. The peer had been allies of the Central Alliance for several generations. They were capable fighters and shrewd traders. If there was information to be had, they likely had it. Dinners and lots of toast with a pungent local liquor were customary and often the best way to find out what they knew. The ambassador was standing next to the main table in the dining room with a small group of regents. It was quite an opulent table. Bowls of fruits and vegetables, platters of roasted meats, and steaming plates with so many tasty little things she'd quite lost track. To what was, what is, and what will ever be, the ambassador said, her voice carried across the room. She raised her glass for a toast. She drained the small glass and turned it upside down to show it was empty. The regents all did the same. Kell walked up beside her. He pointed to a tray of tiny meat pastries. Ambassador, have you tried these? He asked. He'd been sticking a little closer to her since the meetings on Pelscaran. They'd been traveling almost nonstop for 3 weeks. She'd told everyone on the ship they were going out to have consultations, like that was supposed to mean something. Mostly she'd just gone to dinner parties with the various leadership groups, taken a couple of tours of planetary facilities, and held a few meetings. She'd brought 3 people on board. Oddly, she'd not introduced them. She had set them up with dignitary quarters and asked they not be bothered. They kept to themselves. This was supposed to be their last consultation. She had told them that much. She did like the dinner parties, though. The ambassador smiled with admiration. Yes, I had several. They were nicely seasoned, she said. Kell chuckled a little, happy to see something that pleased her. Ambassador Lawrence, an overly stiff, very formal voice said from behind them. The ambassador turned around and grinned. Galen, oh my, Galen, it's been too long, far too long, she said. She reached out toward the tall, lanky man, arms open. Galen reached out to pull her close. They embraced the way old friends who've been through too much together embrace. It was at once a recognition of where they had been and who they had become. Kell smiled a little more. She was clearly very happy to see this person. He was about her age, well-built, with a kind face and streaks of white in his blonde hair. He wore a plain suit with an inner shirt that buttoned to the neck. There was something else about him, too. Something deeper. It wasn't a passing thing. There was a pervasive peacefulness coming from him. Just standing next to him was quieting. It's very good to see you again, Micah. Very good indeed. It's been too long, Galen said. He stepped back to look at her. Indeed, it has been far too long. I'm so happy you could be here, the ambassador replied. Kell was surprised and puzzled. She'd planned to meet him, but had not mentioned it. This was very strange. Once they were underway, she was usually very open with the whole team about what they were doing. Not this time. She'd not told them much of anything beyond the next destination. The ambassador noticed Kell's curiosity. She motioned for him to come closer. Kell, please let me introduce you to my old friend, Dr. Galen Bontier. Galen is a professor at the Planetary Sciences Institute and is giving some lectures here. We trained together on Roz too. Galen, this is my pilot, Kell, she said. Galen blinked a couple of times and looked at the ambassador. You're, he said. Pilot, the ambassador said. She nodded and smiled. It was a big deal. They both knew it. Galen had recognized Kell as Aldaran. He thought Kell might be an advisor or some emissary with the Alliance, not her pilot. He knew the Aldaran skills and their hesitancy to use them in the service of others. She must have quite a charter. I'm pleased to meet you, Kell, Galen said. He crossed his arms, extended his palms, closed them to his sides, and bowed slightly. Kell bowed. How, chie? It means I'm happy to meet you, older brother. He smiled at Galen. Galen smiled at the level of respect. For Kell to call him brother at their first meeting was remarkable. She and Kell must be close. How? Misunka? Galen said, and bowed. You speak my language, Kell asked. Only a few words, Galen replied. Kell smiled. I think more than a few, he said. Galen grinned. The ambassador tilted her head back slightly and raised her eyebrows. Kell realized she wanted to speak to Galen alone. Ambassador, I'd like to check a few things on the shuttle and then get some rest. We have a full day tomorrow, he said. The ambassador smiled. Thank you. I'll see you in the morning, she said. Good night, Ambassador. Good night, Doctor, Kell said. He turned to leave. Galen frowned a little. I hope we meet again. I'd like to have a chance to actually talk with you, he said. Kell nodded. Another time, Doctor, he said. The ambassador turned to Galen and smiled one of her I have something to tell you, and oh, just wait until you find out smiles. I know that smile. Something I should know, Galen asked. Of course. We need to catch up. I have so many stories to tell you, the ambassador joked, smiling wryly at first. Then, still smiling, the expression in her eyes became deadly serious. She said nothing. Galen saw the change and smiled bigger. I see, he said. Let's get a little more something to eat, then we can go sit on the patio. It stopped raining. It will be refreshing, the ambassador said. Galen scratched his chin and raised an eyebrow. I don't know about that, but I am hungry. We could reminisce about being at the cabin after a rainstorm instead of sitting comfortably in that nice alcove over there. I wonder if the coffee is fresh, he asked. The ambassador laughed. Not really a question, is it? She asked. The pair were fond of several beverages. Coffee was not one of them. Galen laughed. No, not really, he said. He picked up a plate. The ambassador shook her head. Get one of those trays, she said. She pointed to a stack at the end of the table. Galen picked up 2 trays and handed one to her. They spent a few minutes loading their trays with small plates, got some coffee, and went outside. Drinks on the patio. An outdoor patio off the dining room. It was a large house with a grand entrance and a large dining room. The wide patio running along the back of the house was set with small tables. A few potted plants were set around the outer edges. The air was fresh and just a little chilly. Galen and the ambassador walked out onto the patio. Over there looks to be mostly dry, Galen said. He pointed to a table near the outer wall of the house. Beyond that was a little garden space. Beyond that was a stone wall. The ambassador kept her head down as she set her tray on the table and removed the plates. We're being closely watched, she whispered. Then she quickly looked up and smiled brightly as if she had just said something funny and perhaps just a little embarrassing. Of course, I wouldn't have thought any differently, Galen said. His voice was a little louder than necessary. What did you do about the soup? That had to have been, ha ha ha. Oh, I wish I had been there, he said. The ambassador started laughing with him. I'm actually rather glad you weren't. You'd have been spending the night in the same quarters with my delegation, and you would have smelled awful, she said. They both laughed out loud again, not quite as loud, just loud enough to be heard by the guards on the other side of the patio. Two old friends catching up, nothing to bother about. The ambassador held out a small plate of tiny pink and green pastries. Try one of these, she said. Galen took one. He'd been into it. Such interesting layers. So small and light, he said. He put the rest of it in his mouth and reached for another. The ambassador laughed. It takes quite the hand to make these. My aide Namani can make something quite similar, she said. She pointed at the plate and wagged her finger. She took one and held it in front of her mouth, turning it from side to side as if to admire it before taking a bite. We went to Magellan near the Hyades cluster. We met the Olmeri on our way home, she whispered. She took a bite. But instead of this plain cream, he uses his grandmother's recipe with genuine maple syrup, she said. Galen sat back and shook his head. No way. I haven't seen real maple syrup since we left Roz 2. It's too hard to get. What the trees can produce isn't always reliable. Where did you find a supply? He asked. The ambassador smiled. Namani is Elranim. The land has been in his family for generations. After his mother passed, the land rights went to his older sister. Sadly, she died in an accident a few years ago, so they went to him as his mother's first son. They keep 3 forests, she said. That explains it, Galen said. He raised his hand with an aha gesture and brought it over his mouth. How did you get away? He asked. He smiled and reached for another plate. Why, I invited them to dinner, of course, the ambassador said. Galen looked skeptical. Did you now? And what did you serve? He asked. Fresh barnacles, the ambassador said, as if it were a delicacy. Galen tried not to laugh. You will have to share the recipe, he said. The ambassador chuckled, shrugged her shoulders, and pouted. As it turned out, they couldn't stay. But I made sure to invite them to come back another time. It seems they may be planning to take me up on my offer, she said. She turned her head to one side and smiled. Galen waved his hand over the plates and shook his head. It's really too bad they couldn't stay. I'm sure they would have enjoyed anything you prepared for them. But you say now it seems they are going to take you up on your invitation? He asked. Yes. It looks like it will be quite soon. I've been told they are already making travel plans, the ambassador said. Galen was smiling, but his eyes were quite serious. Well then, it seems we need to be making some preparations of our own, he said. The ambassador grinned. Indeed. I think it will be quite an event. Would you care to join us? She asked. That's all for tonight. Join us next time when the ambassador and Galen have to fight their way out of a trap. With Kell's help, they evade capture and return to the Magellan. Galen is surprised to find Centaur, Maru, and Biani already on board. The ambassador reveals their mission. You've been listening to Storytime, old-time radio for a new era. Thank you. Good night.